Hello, welcome to this introduction on DevGPT. In this video I will show you what DevGPT is all about. I will show some use cases and how you can use it in your own development. So let's start ahead. What is DevGPT? DevGPT is a port of AutoGPT, which is a Python project based on OpenAI LLMs like GPT-4. DevGPT is an open source project based on AutoGPT. It's written in C# because I'm a C# developer, and it's written for C# developers. So what's the inspiration of DevGPT? In current backend development work, I see a lot of people doing something I call ChatGPT development, in which the developer is like a middleman between the IDE and ChatGPT. So, for example, the programmer wants to do something, he posts the idea to ChatGPT, which gives some code, then he pastes the code into his IDE, which might give an error, and then he pastes the code back to ChatGPT. And this is a bit exaggerated, but you get the idea. The programmer is just a middleman between ChatGPT and the IDE. So the idea is, why not take out the middleman and have the developer specify what it wants to do, what he wants to do, what he wants to accomplish, and let DevGPT handle the iterative process of getting the syntax right and getting everything right. So, for example, the developer says, I want to have an application that does this and this. ChatGPT comes up with an idea how that should work. For example, some code. DevGPT interprets the code using compilers or whatever tools necessary and gives the feedback back to ChatGPT. So you get a loop in which the programmer is only needed for the initial quest. So how does this work? This is based on normal ChatGPT, so normal LLMs, with a little bit of extra syntax. So in the previous version of DevGPT, there would be a explicit message in the prompt about telling what response format ChatGPT should respect. In the current version, we are using a concept called function calling. So apart from giving a normal response, ChatGPT can also respond with a tool call, which is an intention to do something. So, for example, ChatGPT can specify it wants to know the temperature. If you have a temperature API, you can specify that tool. Like I have an API that gives the temperature in a certain location. And then you say, oh, what's the location in Barcelona? And then ChatGPT will respond, oh, I want to do a tool call for this location. And you can handle the tool call client side, and you give back the response to ChatGPT. So that's basically the tool calls concept. Apart from the tool call, we're also having a specific response format in which we are trying to keep ChatGPT on track. So it has to have some reasoning, a plan, and we have commands it wants to execute. Now, for example, what could these commands do? You have something like a read a file, you have a write a file, you have some .NET commands, especially for C# development, backend development. I also created some commands for browser interaction, so ChatGPT can interact with a browser. But this will become more clear in the demos, which will follow very shortly. So over to the demo. This is Visual Studio. And this is the main loop of DevGPT. As you can see, it's a console application, and the basic structure is quite simple. We have a list of commands. This is, for example, the get current date command, read file, write file, shut down, some browser interaction. So these are all the things we are telling ChatGPT that it can do. This is like a menu. And we have the command executor, which can handle execution of these commands. We have the prompt generator, which is an interesting part. The prompt is basically the quest we are embarking on. So we're telling ChatGPT what it should do. And once it has the prompt, you get in a kind of while true loop. So you get a loop until it's done. And the basic loop is we're prompting ChatGPT, we get a response. The response should have a tool call. We execute the tool call until the quest is done. So I think things will be more clear once we run a concrete example. So the first example I want to show is the quiz answers example. This is a basic quest in which the LLM should read a quiz text file in a quiz folder. It should look up the answers or do them from memory. It's a trivia quiz, so doing from memory should be doable. And write all the answers in the text file and shut down. So this is a pretty basic example of something that DevGPT should be able to do. Let me first show what the quiz is. So we have a DevGPT folder, we have a work folder, and in this work folder we have a quiz folder. And I'll delete the answers. This is from a previous run. And in the quiz folder we have some basic questions. So here's the quiz. You have this: which artist released the song Billie Jean? You should know that, it's Michael Jackson. You have some other 80s pop quiz answers, pop quiz questions. So it's pretty easy and something DevGPT should be able to answer. Now with LLMs it's a bit tricky because the response is not always the same. So we'll see what it does this time. So I have to configure the quest. So I have this embedded resource prompt generator. So that reads a text file and converts it to a ChatGPT prompt. So I'm running the application now. And here it is. So welcome. You have this basic prompt in which the goals are specified. You should read the answers, write the answers, read the quiz, and shut down on the end. The other stuff is more generic prompting about the format and stuff like that. So the first answer from ChatGPT is: I want to search for the file called quiz.txt in the quiz folder. So as a user you have to give consent on every tool call, every command. So the first command would be, do you want to search for the file called quiz.txt? Of course we want to do that. And then we respond with, it returned this path. Next thing DevGPT wants to do is read the file. So we read the file. And now let's see what it wants to do. It has to add some basic reasoning. Then we replied with no tool call found. Please make sure to include a tool call in every response. This is auto response. If there's no tool call, we will reprompt ChatGPT and telling it to please do a tool call. And now there is a tool call. So it wants to write a file called answers.txt with all the answers in it. So let's check it out. It's written the file and we shut down. So this program completed. And we have this folder, the DevGPT work quiz, and this is the file created just now. So we have these answers. The first answer, Michael Jackson, the Guns N' Roses. Guns N' Roses is for the Sweet Child of Mine. So I guess the answer should be correct, but it's besides the point of ChatGPT did something autonomously apart from the prompting, but it was very much a DevGPT driven enterprise. So this was the quiz answers sample. I have two more examples. I want to do some unit test writing and I want to do some browser interaction at the end. So let's move on to the unit test writer. I have this quest here It says you have to read a certain file in a certain folder. So we have this sample calculator program, and I want to write unit tests for this calculator program. And this is pretty easy to do using stuff like Copilot, but Copilot is still helping the developer, not really taking the work out of his hands. So in this experiment we really want to tell DevGPT, hey, look at this project, please write the unit test and good luck. So we have this calculator class here. It has a calculator, it has some very basic methods, and we want to write a unit test for this file. So this is we should check where this file is. It should be in the DevGPT folders. In DevGPT work, sample console, and the calculator.cs. So this is the file DevGPT is supposed to write the unit test for. So we should configure the backend unit test writer as a new request, new prompt. So I'll put this instead of the quiz answers, which we did previously. And the rest stays the same. So the program is very generic. You just change the quest and all the commands and stuff, everything stays the same. Let's run. So here we are. I should read the calculator class, create a test project, add unit test, make sure all the tests passed. So we're kind of specific in what we want to do, but not very specific. So the first thing would be to read the calculator class. That function fine. So now the calculator is sent to ChatGPT. And the next thing it wants to do is nothing. I will proceed to create a test project. Now we're replying, please make a tool call. Now, next tool call would be to create a test project. It uses the .NET new command, an execute shell command, and it creates an XUnit project, which is a pretty standard way of doing things in current C# development. So we create the test project. There are multiple tool calls in this response. So we create the test project. We're sending the response back to ChatGPT, and we're also willing to do search files for the chproj. So now we see we have the chproj file of the sample console application, and we have the sample console test application. The next thing it wants to do is create a force of the test project, because it wants to create a new test project, and it wants to add a reference between the projects. So let's go ahead and do that. And add reference. So both responses are sent back to ChatGPT, and sometimes the response is slow, but sometimes it's very fast. So now the next thing it wants to do is write a file. It writes the calculator test file, and it has written some XUnit tests, which is pretty logical given it's an XUnit project. It does some calculation of the add, returns sum given two integers, returns difference. It's just a basic unit test, nothing fancy, but it's readable. It's normal code. So the next thing it wants to do is execute the test. So this is the part in which everything comes together. Now the DevGPT is executing the command, but the input is not immediately shown. Sometimes you have some delay. So what happened. A total of 1 file matched the specified pattern, passed 6 tests, and so that helped. And it wants to shut down. So it has written the file. So let's see what it did. So if we go up a little bit, we have this folder, sample console, and in the sample console is a calculator, and let's show the date of these files so you know I'm not cheating anything or something. So we have this 901, that's just now. So I created this whole project just now, and the project should work. Well, I can test that for you as well. So let me open a terminal here. Open and integrate the terminal. Make it a .NET test. So it's the same as we saw before in DevGPT, but now we know 6 tests passed, so everything fine and 100% coverage of this calculator class. So that's pretty cool. The next thing I want to show you is writing a UI test, or basically testing a web form using DevGPT. This is something that's normally done using Selenium and XPath selectors, and or maybe you're using some other kind of selector, or maybe you're using Playwright, maybe you're recording something. But the thing is, you record a session on a web browser, and you're basically pinning the format of the application, which is pretty rigid. So when there's some, for example, a field is added or removed, or things change, you change framework, your test is quite likely to break. Now, using DevGPT, we can have a more high-level approach to testing a web form. So this is the tester weekdays quest, and the purpose here is we visit a website called Berekenhet. It's a Dutch website which provides all kind of simple tooling, and this is a website that can show you which day a certain date is. So for example, today is 15th March 2024, and it will show you it's a Friday. So this is the functionality of this website, and in this test we want to test this functionality. So in this quest we want to test it. So here's the quest. So we go to the web page, we fill in the form for December 12th 1997, that's my birth date, and then we check if the day is a Wednesday. It should be Wednesday. Then finally we write the results so we can pick it up later, or we have some archive of the functionality of the website, so we know it functions on a certain day. So let's go ahead and plug this in. Web tester weekdays. And here the first response is immediately, oh, we want to open the browser for this page. So we open the browser. I'll show you the browser next to the DevGPT. So here's the browser, and this is this is currently using Selenium to interact with the browser. So we open the page and we send the HTML of the page back to ChatGPT. So it uses this big ball of text to interpret the page. So, and it has some fields here, down here, bereken, datum. So it should fill in this field. Now what does it want to do? It found the field, the datum field. It wants to enter 12/12/1997 and it wants to click on the TK form nav button. Let's see what it does. So we execute the first command and we see that date is entered into the browser. We execute the second command and we see the tool was updated. So we send the HTML once there's a click or something that's interacted with the DOM. We always send the HTML back to ChatGPT so it can work on that. So now it has the updated HTML. It has a write file. It wants to write the test results for this thing, and it says input, expected result, actual result, test outcome, pass. So it has written a file which should be in the working directory of DevGPT. So let's check that as well. It wants to shut down, of course. You can shut down. And you have this test results folder in the DevGPT work folder. And here we are, 908. And we ran the HTML test. Now I have to admit it does not work on every web page. It's a bit dependent on the complexity of the page, because you can imagine it's pretty hard to tell what a page is like just from looking at HTML. DevGPT is also, for example, missing all the CSS information about which element is visible, invisible. I'm trying to tweak it a little bit so it only gets the HTML visible elements, for example, but that's not without risk. But for this basic example, this is it. So what did we cover? I told a little bit about DevGPT, what it's inspired on. I showed you a demo of quiz answers, a unit test writer, and a UI tester. You have to know DevGPT is open source. It's on GitHub. I will post a link on this video. And if there's any interest, I might record a video about how to set up on your local machine, how you can add your own commands, because it's very easy. There's nothing fancy here. And, thank you for watching this far. Bye bye.